Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about, of course, the flood situation, which is a national emergency. The government also, the efforts that are being made at this time, as far as across the board political parties are concerned. We'll be talking about that, considering the situation in Balochistan, Sindh, also southern Punjab. What is the actual situation? We'll be talking to people in the area to get to what the real situation is as far as the flood affected areas are concerned. Also, what are the factors that have contributed to the floods, and whether what can be done at this time for damage control to prevent the kind of devastating loss that we are seeing across the board at this time. The Prime Minister and his efforts, we also saw him today on ground with the people, doing his best to provide as much relief with his team as possible. Let's see, let's talk about what all the government has managed so far, what the donor agencies are doing, what kind of floods, what kind of funds have been pledged by countries like the UK, all of that today. On Perspective, I have with me Munir Ahmed, who's an environmentalist. Thank you so much for joining us today. We also have with us Ali Tawqir Sheikh, who is a climate expert. Thank you for being with us. Later, we'll be talking to Dr. Amir Wali and Farah Azim Shah, also Farah Salim, on overall situation of the floods and what's happening on the ground vis-a-vis the relief efforts. All of that today. Munir Sahab, overall the situation as it stands today, what is your what is your opinion on the flood situation? Of course, it seems like an unprecedented amount of loss being suffered at this time, in terms of course, the loss to agriculture, the loss to lives. At this time, all there should be, and there has been, the focus of the government is on trying to prevent as much damage as possible. How are you looking at things overall?
Of course, this is the extreme event in our history. Even it is larger than what we saw in 2010. But in fact, our government always develop policies and issue some guidelines to prevent such kind of damage that we suffer from such kind of incidents. This is unfortunate that we don't follow those instructions. That is the main crux of it, and that is why we suffer such kind of calamities. One, we know that climate change is happening, and Pakistan is one of the top 5 countries that is vulnerable to such kind of extreme events. Despite that, we are not investing, we are not able to invest the money is required to prevent such kind of extreme events, and to raise public awareness and to engage different stakeholders.
Is there a problem of pledging the funds to the right place, or in your opinion it is a question of having the funds in the first place?
In fact, as a we are a developing country, and we are also have like less funds even to run our day-to-day affairs. Secondly, we don't have the capacity to pitch ourselves to the world community to have those funds. And thirdly, we cannot convince our stakeholders to play their role. And for example, like if we take one example of Sawat, that is all ruined right from Kalam to over 100 plus hotels and different bungalows were built on the edge of the river.
So a lot of those hotels which have been completely wiped out are also the result of illegal construction?
Illegal constructions. Okay. And secondly, we have timber mafia. Okay. That is very strong. No political party or no political government could do anything very concrete against them. And they have wiped out all the trees from mountain areas. That is why we are facing. But there is
such a lot being made of the. Let me go to Tawqir Sahab. Tawqir Sahab, there is such a lot being made of the tsunami, the tree tsunami by the last government. A lot was said about climate change also. Munir Sahab is saying that this mafia is so strong that really nothing could be done about it. Is that true? What's your opinion on that?
Nothing can be done about what?
The timber mafia, which is what
the mafias that
is talking about.
See, the signs of good governance are that it is inclusive, it reaches out to the poor and the marginalized, be they minorities, be they in poor regions or poor districts or poor areas of the country, and give them fairness in the system. They should have a faith. And a bus driver's son or daughter should be able to aspire to go to the highest levels. But if there is elite capture, then the state becomes very weak. Then they rule in different domains. It can be land mafia, it can be timber mafia, it can be sugar mafia, it can be different kinds, wheat mafia. So the question is that as a developing country, we are struggling for sustainable development, which means it has to be inclusive, it has to serve everyone, not just the interest groups. Presently, there is a strong feeling that the country has become hostage to various interest groups, including timber mafia.
Okay, but when you talk about mafias, when you talk about overall, good governance, when implementation is a problem, it has been always a problem. How do you link that to what's happening today in terms of the devastation that's achieved?
It's very simple. There are two biggest challenges this country has for this century. One is poverty. Roughly half of our population is between $3 and $4 a day.
Right.
And the numbers may be increasing because the commodity prices are increasing globally, and our own economy is not growing at the same rate. And the second biggest challenge is expanding climate change. Now, the climate vulnerability and poverty reinforce each other. The more poor people you'll have, there'll be more climate vulnerability. More climate vulnerability and more. Not all poor are climate vulnerable and not all rich are climate secure. But having said that, they coincide in most of the instances.
But in terms of being affected by...
In order to address that, we are missing the third important tier of government, that is local government, because vulnerability is an extremely local issue. It's an issue that can be resolved only at the local level. That means local governance institutions need to be developed, strengthened, trusted and resourced, so that they could do their local planning to address climate vulnerabilities, and if they do, over a period of time our climate vulnerability will be reduced. But since that's absent, most of the planning is top down at the federal or provincial levels, and there's a vacuum there. And that's why if you see in these pictures that we have seen in the last 2-3 days, it's so hard for the relief services to reach there because there is no local government.
But overall, in terms of what's happening at this time, do you think that there is, generally speaking, as far as the situation today, how worse can it be in the next, say, 5 years or 10 years if we don't take control now? We are seeing the devastation at this time. We are seeing what's happening to our people, the livestock, the human lives being lost, all of that today.
Let me say next 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months and 3 years, if that makes sense to you. First 3 weeks or 3 days to 3 weeks is providing emergency services, which is water, food, shelter, and next 3 months is epidemics, health. And if we cannot address that, there will be a lot of disease and a lot of vulnerability. And within this period, we have to ensure that the education system is resumed. If people are poor and they are vulnerable and they are victims of floods, it does not mean that one flood means that their children cannot go to school and their academic year is lost or their education from their family is lost. So that is a top priority as far as I'm concerned after health. And after health, this is.
But at this time, Munir Sahab, at this time, the kind of devastation that we are seeing, do you think that's possible at all? We saw what happened where we were talking about illegal construction and all that, but hotels have been wiped out. We've also seen, dead bodies being fished out of the water. We talk about South Punjab, we talk about what's happening in KP at this time, we talk about Balochistan, Sindh, it's everywhere. The kind of havoc, the kind of, what can one call it, devastation that is at play at this time. Do you think it's possible at all to go back to education, to send children back to school at all?
It would take a lot of time and a lot of resources because we have seen devastation in Balochistan that is total devastation. And we have to begin right from zero again in Balochistan. And what has happened in several districts of KP, again, we have to start very bottom to rebuild those things. But while doing all these things, we have to take certain measures. We have to ensure district development, district disaster management authorities. They were supposed to be done years back, but we could not develop the system over there. And we don't have local emergencies and local governments over there, those who could help their people
But
to
the
overcome
NDMA,
and to
PDMA, Rescue Double One,
the
Double Two.
NDMA is a national agency, and then
PDMA,
PDMA, and then there would have been district disaster management authorities.
Okay, but there is one.
Unfortunately, as Taqir Saab has said, we miss the local governance,
Okay.
whether it is to combat disasters or to develop some management plans and action plans at the local grounds.
These organizations, these bodies, PDMA, NDMA, there have to be on a local scale also, so that they can then, you know, have those efforts can then be tried. But as I understand, there is a disaster management authority.
That's
Yes.
at the policy level.
Right.
That's
okay.
at the federal level or the provincial level.
So you
The question is, what do we do on the
What
ground?
we do at the ground, at the ground level, the local governors manage all the affairs of the local at the local level. The
But
same
what about the
things
local
are being
bodies at
done.
play? When we talk about local bodies elections, when we talk about those elected representatives on the ground, don't they have to play a role also?
They have to play their role, but in most of rather we don't have the governance local governance system in place at the moment. And since government was trying to have it, but I don't know what they were like due to inclement weather, quote unquote, they were postponed. And what has been happening before that? And same is the case with Balochistan and KP. We don't even in Punjab. I think there is no local governance.
It has to be prioritized.
It has to be
And
prioritized.
it has to be in place before next monsoon. That's
Yeah.
the point. You were highlighting the
What,
urgency.
that's what I'm saying. As far as next monsoon is concerned, what are your predictions? I mean, of course, it's right now we are in the midst of this crisis, and of course that takes precedence over all else. But in your opinion, the next monsoon can be more deadly, or it can, you know, potentially be hazardous
See,
also.
the weather systems cannot be predicted that much in advance.
Okay.
But looking at the climate change trends, this may be the beginning of a new normal.
Okay.
And just the beginning. From every experience one learns, but unless the state and its institutions learn, that learning cannot be applied in real life. Now 2010 was a very big flood for Pakistan.
Yes, but how do you compare? I want to talk about that.
It's very simple.
Gee.
The 2010 flood was a riverine flood.
Okay.
It was only in Indus. And it was very predictable in the sense that we knew that this is a middle level flood or a high level flood, and we knew its speed and how long it will take to reach to Sindh.
Okay.
So we knew about the devastation it can cause, the speed with which it will move, the timing when it will reach, and also if it was harmful for the people living in the neighborhood. In this instance, riverine flood has just begun to happen from today from Nowshera.
Okay.
A riverine flood has not happened. Tarbela and Mangla are just getting filled, and I hope there are no more rains to cause that. In this case, we have torrential rains, we have urban floods, we have floods coming from the barren mountains of Balochistan, Khoe Suleiman, and torrential rains are unprecedented in terms of their scale. They are, so the fear is that in future, what if all these are non-Indus basin causes of flooding, and in last 75 years we have never paid enough attention to them.
Okay.
Now when the cloud outburst happened in Nowshera, it's crossing 300 cubic feet per second. It's a very high altitude, and it threatens our infrastructure, including water-related infrastructure. As it passes through the Indus, it can cause additional damage. But the the flash floods that are coming from Balochistan to Kisar in Sindh and to southern Punjab. We have housing societies at the bottom of foothills. They are causing the damage. They have diverted water to Mali River in Sindh, in Karachi. That is causing devastation.
Right. Risa, we have someone from Balochistan. Let me go to Dr. Amir Wali, who is from Lasbela. Thank you so much for being with us. Dr. Amir, what is the situation at this time as far as Balochistan is concerned? Could you please update us?
Balochistan, actually, it has been raining last for, I think, since July. I think it was 1st and 3rd July, and it has been raining. And it has rained a lot, and a lot of spills of rain came, and they all took birth in Indian Ocean, and first rained over Sindh and Karachi, later entered into Balochistan. And mostly the districts which are hit badly, that is Lasbela district, Nasirabad district, and recent, that is Quetta, and the other Bolan or the other areas, they have been badly hit by the rain. Actually, the current situation is that cities or the urban areas where we have access to them, they are safe. But the adjoining areas, we call them goat, they have been badly affected. They have been badly hit, especially in Uttal. Uttal is the Tahsil of district Lasbela, and Uttal has been badly hit, and the other Bela has been badly hit. People are homeless, they are bichara shelterless, and I have visited them myself, and actually most of the areas we do not have access right now. After passage of 2 months, we do not have proper passage to access them, to go there to check and to see what kind of devastation occurred there. We do not have. And the main source is the road to go there. We do not have the helicopter or any other source to go there. Roads are badly damaged, and they are disconnected from the authorities or the district authorities, and they are not compensated right now, and they do not have water to drink, and they are right now drinking the water which is that is I think lots of goats or the sheep, they have been washed away, they died there. Females are coming, and from that water they take the water and they drink. See the situation. And surely I live in Lasbela and Uttal. Here district administration is trying its best. I went to DC one day, and he said we went and we came there, we sent our medical teams there. But overall the situation is badly disturbed. And last night, the latest update that I think that was in news last night, Quetta was almost, that is the capital city of Balochistan. Imagine that was disconnected about 10 hours from all kind of networks, road, and all. It was disconnected. And early morning we came to know that a lot of damages have been done there. Actually, it rained beyond the expectation.
What about the role the government is playing? Could you please update us a little bit about that? You're saying that there are areas that are still inaccessible at this point.
There are lots of people in Balochistan, they live in different goats. Wherever their homes are, where they are in livelihood, they stay there. And they are surrounded by the rivers or the mountains. And water have come from the mountains, and they have either been washed out or there are around water is there. So it's very difficult to access them. I think army officers, they use helicopter, PM I think used helicopter, went there. But it is very difficult for the local government, local administration or the local medical team to go there. I said I myself tried by using motorbike to go there to access them. I was failed to reach there. roads are badly damaged, bridges are damaged, they have been washed out completely. And certain areas, after 5 or 6 or 7 days of the flood, we have they themselves came out with the mud and they took certain things to heat there. Otherwise, it was very difficult for local government to reach there.
Right. Thank you so much for your update, Dr. Ahmed. Thank you for updating us on what's happening in Las Bela. And Munir Sahab, you heard what Dr. Ahmed was saying. He's saying that clearly there are a lot of areas that are disconnected. He said even Quetta was disconnected for 10 hours yesterday. So the situation overall seems to be catastrophic as far as Balochistan is concerned. But when we talk about something being preventable, what does it essentially mean? At this time, of course, we're thinking about damage control primarily. What are some of the measures in your experience that we can take immediately? Of course, the government is doing what it can to do that kind of damage control.
At this moment, certainly we have to ensure that the people have proper shelter, food, and especially they have potable water. It should not cause any other damage to the health of the already affectees of the floods. And secondly, we need to approach to all the affectees a very integrated way.
We talk about, but we're also looking at, let me come back to you, Tawqir Sahab, we saw that, you know, the UK also has pledged support. It has pledged funds to the floods at this time. We're also seeing, we're asking, the Prime Minister is also asking other friendly countries to contribute. We also want donor organizations, international donor organizations, the UN also. What kind, in your opinion, of course it's an estimation, but what kind of a figure do you think in your mind would we require at all to deal with the kind of devastation that's happening, to deal with the kind of rehabilitation that will be needed from this devastation?
Ma'am, it depends. How do we want to reconstruct?
Okay.
If we want climate resilient development, so that in next year's flood, same houses are not destroyed, it will cost you more. That means instead of having just cash the disbursement through BISP, we'll need to think more seriously that how do we undertake reconstruction with the help of international assistance.
Okay.
We need international assistance from our partners globally, also to ensure that these hotels and other encroachments or riverbanks are not allowed to happen again, so that next time, whenever there is a flood, I hope there is not a flood anytime soon, there is no destruction of the same kind that we have witnessed this time around. That means that the river banks will need investment to be protected and to be strengthened again, because these hotel people all over Swat Kalam area that we have recently seen have actually destroyed. Then we have seen that the kacha houses in Balochistan, they are very, very poor people. The mud houses will not withstand any flood, any rain in future. They need to be assisted with new technology to build relatively more resilient housing, and that will require state subsidy, and that can come through BISP and others, not only cash grant for food, but also cash grant to reconstruct their houses.
Of course.
So we need to think through a little bit more deeply, how do we want to see this country develop.
What about even otherwise, we are seeing a lot of crop as far as cotton is concerned. There's a lot of destruction there. Agriculture overall will suffer a lot because of what's happening at this time. And as a result of that, we will see a food shortage. We will also see inflation. What do you think about those things?
You see, the commodity prices are increasing everywhere in the world, and they're becoming more expensive. And with this destruction, there'll be shortages, acute shortages. So as part of redevelopment, I'm using the word redevelopment, we need to encourage storage of grain at the district, village and tehsil and provincial levels.
Okay.
At least a reserve for one season's crops, which means for 3 or 4 months, the government should be able to release, just the way the government releases wheat, we should be able to release other commodities.
So we are seeing that, of course, because of this natural disaster that has happened of unprecedented proportions, there's going to be a lot more leaning on... the government
In
on
fact,
the funds that, you know, we will expect subsidies, we will expect a lot of help from the government, already a government that is clearly stretched tight.
in fact, out of this tragedy should emerge an opportunity for us to rebuild this country in a more climate resilient fashion. This is a godsend opportunity. It's a message for us. How do we want to see our children and grandchildren live in this country? We don't want to see them as beggars. And that's why I mentioned that policymakers and international community's attention span is very limited. In a month's time, 3 weeks' time, we'll be talking about something. It is our responsibility to speak about education right now. There are thousands and thousands of schools that have disappeared, and thousands of students are outside classrooms, and many teachers may have actually died or left that community. So I think if we want to protect the future of this country, I think education is very important. If we want to protect people from epidemics, I think absolutely important. And fortunately, doctors' associations in this country are very well organized, very strong. They can have health camps right away. And this is a process of about 3 months. We have to protect this country. We don't want to see epidemics like we had COVID-19 emerging. So we have to protect from epidemics. We have to protect from a generation being out of school. We saw that after the earthquakes in 2005, that should not happen. And we need to build back this country better than it was before.
Munir Sahab, you know what Taqir Sahab is saying, he's talking about the fact that there needs to be concentration on education, there needs to be concentration on prevention from epidemics, all of those things. In the kind of situation we are in at this time, do you think we'll be able to do those things? You know, he's saying that look at it as an opportunity to rebuild. But, you know, of course, for rebuilding, the government will require funds. Already they're trying to rebuild an economy. They're trying to sustain, you know, there is, of course, we saw what's happening as far as the IMF is concerned. The sacrifices that the government has had to make since they've come in. You know, it hasn't been an easy task. We've seen across the board the kind of turn that has taken. Things are, you know, we were seeing a kind of stabilization. We were seeing things move towards the right direction. But now there is this other crisis on hand for them to deal with.
That is definitely an uphill task. And developing like climate resilient development, introducing the concept and actions plan and engaging stakeholders in it, definitely it's a huge task. And when we talk about investments to create such kind of resilient environment, it is another challenge. And definitely when we are suffering from our economy is going down. 45% is the inflation rate at the moment, and our GDP is not taking off. So in such kind of, and another dilemma with us is that our donors don't trust us anymore. They are very reluctant to invest more money. We have to restore our trust as well. There should be some confidence building measures as well with the international donors. In the last 4 or 5 years, we have seen that they have gradually reduced, and the large donors have stopped, you know, investing in Pakistan in the last 4 years. You name the international donor, the multi-million projects were not coming to Pakistan.
Why do you think that happened? When, you know, the last
again, it's the matter of a priority.
But then they said that they had so much confidence from the international community. Why wasn't?
If the government have no priority of engaging international partners in the right way as they should be, definitely they would not. And secondly, it's the matter of how if the resilient, climate resilient development, or even the development is your priority or not. Government has to make it, as Taqir Sahab said, it's a matter of like a few weeks. Our politicians and decision makers will just forget what has happened in our country, and they may be moving away from whatever the situation at the moment is. They need long-term serious commitment to people.
When we talk about climate change, when we talk about the effect of climate change, I think we've had a conversation on this before also, that it's not taken as seriously, Taqir Sahab, as doesn't this disaster highlight how important it is, and the fact that it perhaps needs to take precedence over a lot of things if we are to be able to exist at all?
I think this is an excellent question, and thank you for raising this. This is an existential threat to Pakistan.
Okay.
It's part of our national security paradigm. There's no bigger internal threat to Pakistan's economy and society and culture and its ecosystems than climate change.
Okay.
What happened in Balochistan? Balochistan is not a typical monsoon area. Please remember that. What has happened is that clouds and rain systems are coming not only from Bay of Bengal, but also from the Arabian Sea, which is the western monsoon system.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, people dying, livestock dying, everything else is very sensitive for all of us. But remember losing the topsoil? You saw that the way the topsoil is getting depleted, that's Pakistan's fertility, that's Pakistan's food security getting washed away. So we have to take climate change in its manifestations. When the flash flood comes, it brings fertility with it.
Okay.
Now, it kills people, of course, in the process, but it also kills the economy. It also kills or harms or hurts the ability to bounce back for a society. That's why I think it's absolutely important that we see it as a 3-point key agenda.
Okay.
First agenda is we must respect that water flows gravity. We should not have any development on its way.
Okay.
We should not allow things getting reconstructed in those areas, be these human settlements, be these hotels or
But why
industry.
has that happened in the sense that, of course, you're saying
Bad
illegal-
governance is
Bad governance.
50 years of baggage that
But
we
when
have.
we, of course, these hotel owners, this is a huge loss to them. It is a huge loss. So that construction, ultimately, I'm sure that, the results we
I'm
are
less
seeing.
concerned about hotel owner, I'm concerned about them, but please remember there must be 10, 20, 50 people working for that.
Right, of
And
course.
there may be a value chain of another 100
Of
people.
course, of course.
So why can't they construct a hotel at a safer place and give sustainable livelihoods?
Which
to
goes
these
back to the
families?
fact that those systems need to be in place.
That's the first thing. And second, we need to think about our cropping pattern because untimely rains are not affordable for us. For example, cotton. Cotton is a very big source of foreign exchange earning for us. If it gets damaged as it got this year, it hurts the next fiscal year as well. Therefore, we need to focus on the types of crops that can withstand unpredictable water supplies.
Okay, let me come back to you. We have with us Dr. Kaise Aslam, who's a senior economist. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Kaise, overall, we're talking about the effects of these floods on economy at this time, also the numerous challenges that we were confronting anyway, as far as economy is concerned, inflation being one of them. What are some of the, quick effects you see? Of course, we are going to be seeing food shortage, we are going to be seeing more inflation. What are some of the effects you think that we should be prepared for after this kind of an, unprecedented devastation that we are seeing?
Thank you very much. In the short run, I think not only that human life has been lost, human property has been lost, the crops have been affected, especially the rice crop, which is our exports, the horticulture, the dry fruits. They are all exportable as well as these basic earnings of the people of the area. Tourism has been affected, and then a lot of money will be, and especially the cattle, the meat will be affected. There have been millions of washed away cattle. The effect will be that the budget will have to be spent on rehabilitation. There are railway lines, there are roads, there are that have infrastructure that has to be rebuilt. So a development expenditure will have to be shifted from other projects of the budget, and I agree that the next budget will have to be affected. Our foreign exchange will have to be affected. Jobs will have to. Then the government has promised that people who have died or been affected, they'll be paid a million rupees and 25 rupees for property, that is going to affect the budget. So overall, the economy, which is anyway weak, will shrink in the short run. And naturally, it will take time to rehabilitate people, to that water to recede, and the lands to be cultivable once again. We need to find out now that, the inflation is going to go up. It is 44% now. It is going to go up to about 50%. The dollar is going to go up because we are importing things, energy sources. We can't. Our gas supply has been disrupted. So I think it is a very big challenge on the economy as such. And now that there is a conflict between the KPK government and the federal government about the money that has to be taken away and spent on rehabilitation, I think either we will have to convince IMF, or we will the IMF conditions might not be met. So there is a issue there also, which might delay the strength that has
What
to
do
come
you think? What do you think, as an economist? What can we expect there? For the KP government to write to the federal government on this, like you are saying, its potential ramifications for the IMF program are dire. Do you think that it will come to that at all?
I think the IMF will have to reconsider because they also know the UNO has said that Pakistan is a calamity area, and that they are going to collect money for the rehabilitation. So I think IMF will go with the UN and will give us some respite in this matter. I don't think they will be hard on us because one of the provincial governments has refused to abide by their conditions. I think some respite will come. But the whole thing is that the economy, we will apart from spending money on saving people, I think some policy will have to come about saving the people from climate change and future floods. Some of the money will have to be given.
Pledged to that, right? Certainly. Certainly. Thank you so much for your input, Dr. Kes. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Sab, in terms of what's happened as far as this letter of we've seen the KP government to the federal government, how do you see this development? Certainly we didn't need it. It's completely going to have its own repercussions. Are you as hopeful as Dr. Kes is that the IMF will be lenient?
There are no other choice. Okay. This was very unfortunate in a situation grim situation like this. Even in ordinary circumstances, this is an internal matter. It shouldn't have been handled this way. I hope they will backtrack, and I share the optimism of the Minister Miftah that he'll be able to resolve it before the board meeting. But having said that, IMF can deal only with sovereign.
Right.
They have not in the past, and they cannot, technically speaking, legally speaking, deal with the non-sovereign entities within this country. So, federal government will be well in its right to say or reject any claim coming from any provincial government. Right. So, I'm not a political person.
But you think that?
But my sense is that these are federal issues. Let the federal government handle that.
Munir Sahab, do you agree?
I agree, but federal government can also take some severe steps against such kind of steps if a province write a letter or try to disobey the sovereign decisions.
But again, at this time we are seeing the kind of devastation
this is really a bad taste in the mouth.
Exactly.
Very unfortunate. and the KP government should have not written it. And even in the flood relief services that federal government is expected to, and they are not obliging to certain. And this is really a very strange behavior. And the funds that MIFTA asked the KP government, that was the surplus funds of the former FATA districts.
Okay.
And if they are not spent, and they are the surplus, and they are more than the required money, and if the federal has provided that money and they want back for certain other objective or certain other initiative or anything else, the province,
It is the purview. If we talk about the legality of it, it's certainly the purview of the federal government to do
federal
so.
government, of course, and the KP should have provided surplus funds back to government. Instead, they wrote a letter to the federal minister and sent a copy to the IMF and circulated in the entire media and in the international media.
Right, unfortunately.
Totally not
Unprecedented, I would say again, the
yeah,
kind of
never,
acrimony that
never,
is being shown to the federal government.
We have
by
seen very strong conflicts between the federal and provinces, but it never happened, and such kind of things never happened again, I believe. And I believe this damage can be controlled, because as Tawqir Sahab said and Qais Sahab said,
we didn't need it. There's no denying that.
It's not, but having said that, ma'am,
Ji.
Democracy is very new in our country. We have used to very central, strong, and then all provinces adhering to. In our system, the provinces after the 18th Amendment have lots of powers and lots of authorities in several domains.
But one would
And,
hope.
and a lot of them are not clear to us. There are duplications of mandates and resources and
Okay, sir,
policies.
I don't think we can hide behind the 18th Amendment to justify what the KP
no,
government has done.
I'm not justifying
Ji.
what KP. What I'm trying to say is this: the friction between the provinces will be a new normal for this country. It will happen again and again on numerous things. It has happened between previous government and PPP in Sindh. It has happened previously between federal government, Benazir Bhutto's government.
Do you think it's an effect of the 18th Amendment?
No, it predates 18th Amendment. But I'm trying to say is
That it might happen
we
again.
cannot issue fatwas on people that you are patriotic or not. It's just that ill-advised step that that provincial government took, shouldn't have done that. And federal government is well within its right to claim that it's a federal issue, you better stay away from
Right,
it.
unfortunately, that's
In fact, the 18th Amendment was to strengthen the local structures and the local governance, and it was not to create conflict with the federal.
I think this is a topic that we would like to take up later on in other program. Thank you so much for being with us. Munir Ahmed Saab, thank you for joining us. Ali Tawqir Sheikh Saab, thank you for being with us. Dr. Amir Wali, thank you for your update. Dr. Qais Aslam, again, thank you for updating us on the relief efforts at this time. Overall, certainly it is a disaster of this kind of unprecedented proportions. Certainly, is a case in point for the kind of unity that is needed to rebuild Pakistan in the event of this kind of a disaster. But unfortunately, the letter from the KP government to the federal government highlights the kind of acrimony that is being seen across the board. It's unfortunate. It should not have been done. It also indicates the fact that there is clearly that absence of unity that should be there to deal with a crisis of this epic proportions. Let's hope that perhaps we can strive towards some kind of an accord that only is supposed to work for what's better for Pakistan at this time where so many are struggling just to survive. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.